And in that moment, I wanted to scream, it's because I'm here. It's because I'm in the hospital. I didn't, but I knew that walking back into that hospital was going to make my body clam up from the prior trauma and the prior everything. I just knew.
Hello and welcome to Healing Trauma Mamas. I'm your host, Madon Wingo. Thank you for joining us as we share in our stories and experiences of healing from childhood traumas and birth traumas. Listen as we discuss our struggles, our failures, our strengths and our victories, and all those lessons we've learned along the way. Hello, Healing Trauma Mamas. Welcome back to the podcast today. I'm really excited to bring to you another wonderful mom's journey and just to share and learn from our beautiful community that we have been building around Healing Trauma Mamas and get to learn from another mom and share her experience and celebrate with her. With that, Destin, would you mind introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I am Destin, and I have had 3 babies now. My oldest is 8, my middle is 4, and my youngest is 8 weeks as of yesterday. Yay! I'm an Air Force veteran as well as a military spouse now. So I'm a military wife, and I switched over to you end of pregnancy, really. 3rd trimester, right? Yep.
Kind of switch gears a little bit, but it was switching gears, but not necessarily. So
Sorry.
we probably have, it's okay. We'll hear children. It's no big deal. Let's start back. Do you want to go over all your births? Do you want to go over military stuff? What do you want to share about your journey?
Sure. All of my babies have been born in different places. So my oldest was born in Georgia. I've had 3 C-sections now. My first one, I didn't know anything. I didn't look into anything, didn't research anything, just thought, oh, I'll just go in, have my baby. Everyone goes to the hospital, we'll do that. And I actually didn't even want to breastfeed. I wanted to bottle feed because that's what I only knew. And I was young. So it actually took my sister-in-law talking to me and really honing in of just try to breastfeed, and for me to go, all right, I'll try it for a couple weeks, and if I don't like it, then I'm not doing it and no one's making me do it. And then I ended up breastfeeding him for 3 years.
Good job. Whoa.
And then so his birth was pretty typical. I had a great pregnancy. My husband was deployed. We found out in July that I was pregnant. I found out super early in the pregnancy. I was only 3 weeks gestation when I found out. And then he deployed in October of that year. We were brand new married as well. We had just been married in May of that year. So we started out real quick. And then we had to beg almost to get him to be back early from his deployment just so that he could be here for the birth. And then he arrived, we got induced about 3 days before his team got back home. We ended up having him the day after we got induced. So it was only about 2 days he would have been there, and he maybe would have been 2 days old anyway. But yeah, because he ended up coming at 41 weeks and a day. My second, I won't go into too much detail. I don't want to scare people too much, but that was my traumatic pregnancy. It started with trauma and it ended with trauma. It started with being told that I needed to go home, that I was likely going to have a miscarriage. And there was no rhyme or reason when I asked why. The only reason I was given was when you catch your baby early, then that's generally what happens early in pregnancy to most women. If you haven't had a miscarriage, come back in 4 weeks. So I was like, I'm going to go ahead and schedule this because I'll be back in 4 weeks. And thankfully I did, because he is now a vibrant 4-year-old that you hear in the background. So
So how did the rest of that pregnancy go then? So you had that at the beginning, and then it was obviously he was healthy and well and doing great. So throughout the pregnancy, did you see the same OB who told you that?
So it was actually the midwife that worked there that told me that. we were sitting in this little, it wasn't the main waiting room, but it was after you get pulled back. And then there's another waiting room. And then, so it's a smaller waiting room. And she pulls me into the hallway while my husband and my oldest were sitting there in that waiting room and just told me in the hallway because they couldn't initially take me as a patient at that time because all they saw was the sac. To them, there was no baby yet because I was only 2 weeks gestation. But just my intuition, I knew everything was going to be fine. I had never had a history of any issues. I came back in 4 weeks. I saw her for a while and things were okay. They really harped on the fact that I was technically considered obese at the time, which I was very unhealthy when I got pregnant. I didn't exercise. I didn't, other than your normal walking around to do stuff. And I didn't eat well before getting pregnant. And it did take us a while to get pregnant. And I think a lot of that had to do with my unhealthy lifestyle. And so they really harped on that every time I would go in. And so I always came out feeling really bad. And then I ended up getting gestational diabetes, diagnosis of gestational diabetes. And when I say I got diagnosed, I did the 1 hour and I was 212. So it was a very big bomb.
Wow.
And yeah, after that, she told me she wasn't going to be able to, yes, she wasn't going to be able to take me as her client. And so she passed me off to an OB because she didn't think I was going to be able to control it with my diet. So I was supposed to go to a nutritionist that worked in the same facility because it was an Army medical center that I was being seen at. And they couldn't get me in until I was 39 weeks for the diet to work on my diet. So I did everything on my own. I did my own research as far as what to eat, what not to eat, how much to eat, everything all on my own. And I ended up controlling it completely with my diet. All my numbers were well within, unless I purposely treated myself to something that would spike me a little bit and everything. They fought me on pretty much everything after that, even the way I was documenting my numbers. They didn't like that I wasn't writing them down on a sheet of paper, like handwriting them. I was documenting them through an app, which was interesting. And they didn't like that. They were like, well, you can't give the app to your doctor or whatever. And I was like, yeah, but I could show him my numbers with it. And if he wants to write it down, he absolutely can. And he himself didn't have a problem with that, but the nurses were the ones who gave me an issue with it. He harped on my weight again. I gained probably at that point, weight wise, I gained about 15 pounds. And then when I started the diet, I didn't gain any more. I didn't lose any, but I didn't gain any. And then he really gave me issues when it came to my choices as far as if I was going to be having a C-section or induction and when that was going to happen, because I had gestational diabetes and was measuring 2 weeks ahead. Now, my oldest, he measured 2 weeks ahead as well. And it was I found it comical because with my first, hey, I'm talking right now. Okay. That's Miss Badon. Say hello. Hello. Okay.
Hi.
And so I found it comical because with my first, he said, these numbers may not be accurate and they're just a guesstimation. And if issues come up during your birth or your labor, we'll handle it then. We're not going to focus on how big the baby really is because it could be really inaccurate right now. Yeah. And then with my second, they completely panicked. Oh my goodness. So you have gestational diabetes. You now have a big baby. It's all your fault. These things that weren't told to me, they were yelled at to me. So it really changed a lot of things. But even before that, I had fallen down the stairs and ended up doing an NST because I wanted to make sure everything was okay after I fell down the stairs. And that's when the real problems, I think, started with this specific OB, as far as he didn't like that I wasn't going to continue with NSTs. Now, we had never had any issues with any of the things we saw on any of the ultrasounds. The fluids were always good. They were within what they looked for. Obviously, as normal, it fluctuated, but we never had any issues. We never had any issues with his heart. We had never had any issues with contractions happening too early or anything like that. And the only thing they had was that he was measuring big. And so he wanted me to do the NSTs for that. He always, oh man, Benji moved so fast, so much. It was ridiculous. If he ever slowed down on moving, I would notice immediately. It was just so much moving. He always did. And so I really didn't feel the need to do that, especially because I was driving 30 minutes one way with a 3-year-old with me, and they wanted me to do that twice a week. And that would just take up too much of his day. And I didn't feel that was fair to him, because what is he supposed to do for those couple hours? And he would have done it, and he's so well behaved and he would have been fine. But I didn't feel like it was necessary to put him through that when I didn't feel it was necessary for the health of my second. So I felt he was healthy enough. I felt I could monitor everything at home, and we were continually monitoring at all my appointments.
What about the front flip?
Not right now. Okay. And he can do a front flip on the trampoline now. And then so I didn't feel it was necessary. So I told him no. And I had to tell him no 3 times. And then one day he goes, "Do you know why I want you to do the NSTs?" And I explained to him, yes. And I explained to him, I go, "You've told me before." And then he goes, "What did I tell you?" Almost like I was a child. I needed to repeat the instructions he had given me. And I repeated it back to him. And then I told him exactly what I just told you. I feel like I can monitor these things at home. I have no issues. Hey, could y'all go get dad and tell him that Eli's awake, please? And this was the decision I was making. I don't feel it is necessary. No. And he got upset about it, and he huffed about it. And then he just was like, okay. And he stopped asking me about it. And no, because you'll fall down the stairs. No. Okay. No. And then it came to the whole gestational diabetes and he wanted me to schedule an induction at 39 weeks or a C-section at 40. Now, the whole time he's been preaching to me, especially when he was talking about the NSTs, he was talking about how he always followed the ACOG recommendations. So before going into this, I knew he was going to ask me at some point. So I had already had them printed out and with me, and I had highlighted what the recommendations were for my specific situation.
Yeah.
And it stated to allow the mother to go to 40 days or 40 weeks and 6 days, basically 41 weeks before induction, to allow mother to go into labor naturally, being diet controlled, and that big baby and gestational diabetes alone were not considered reasons for early induction or automatic C-section. And his option to me was that at 40 weeks, it would be an automatic C-section.
Not much of an option.
Yeah. So I was like, I will not be scheduling anything. And he goes, "But I follow ACOG." And I immediately whipped out the paperwork with everything highlighted. And I said, "Here's the recommendations." And then I verbally stated what I just stated to you and to him. And he promptly threw it in the trash and started yelling at me that I was obese, that my baby was going to have type 2 diabetes because I had gestational diabetes. And it was my fault because I had gestational diabetes because I was obese. And some of that may be true. I may have gotten gestational diabetes because of the way my lifestyle was before, and it wasn't the greatest, and that's fine. That's something that I carry with me, but not something that should be thrown in my face. And so he got really upset with me and was yelling at me about it, telling me it was my fault and that my baby could die because I wasn't doing the C-section or an early induction because he was going to be a big baby. And I was so small that there's no way he was going to fit through my pelvis. And so my husband stood up, and I've never seen my husband get into that buff out, chest out, ready to fight stance, but he did. And he kicked him out and told him that we were doing what I chose to do. We were not scheduling anything, that I had said what I was said, and that was it. And so that he wasn't going to work up with me anymore. That's what my husband told him. And he didn't. He passed me off to the chief. I was then labeled as the problem child of the patients. And so the other ones didn't really want to work with me either because of all the rumors that had gone around about me, which is fine. But of course, the chief took me in, and she actually was really good. She was fine with it all. She expressed to me that she did recommend I do the NSTs, but understood that I was educated enough not to, that I didn't want to, and could make the decision. So she was fine. She seemed fine with it and everything. And then luckily, she was the one on call when I went into labor. I did go into labor on my own at 38 weeks and 3 days. Benji broke my water. And then I went into labor, and I had this little voice in my head that was really quiet that told me to stay home, but I didn't know what to do. And I remember that day, it was crazy. I woke up around 8ish, probably. We were going to take my son to a trial swim lesson that was free to see if we liked the company or not, and if we were going to put him in swim lessons. And I had lost my mucus plug before around 9 or 9:30, and I didn't know that because I never lost it before. So I didn't know I lost my mucus plug. And then we went to the swim thing. I was pretty grumpy throughout the day. I just woke up not in a very good mood and feeling very uncomfortable. And then so we're sitting at the swim thing, nothing going on, nothing happening, no bloody show or anything. And then we went to Target because I needed to get bras, my nursing bras for my bag. And then I decided I really feel like I need to walk. And so we stayed and I walked a few laps. They went and got lunch at the little food center. And then we went home, and my pump was sitting at the door. It had been delivered. I put my oldest, down for a nap at 3. And at 3:15, I pumped for probably a minute or less after doing 10 assisted squats, and felt that balloon fill up and just pop right there in the
We'll
vent.
go.
Water was everywhere. It was like Niagara Falls. And so I always joke that Niagara, when my water breaks, Niagara falls out of my vagina. It's because it was like the movies for both my oldest and my second. And then so I had just put him down. He has been sleeping for 15 minutes, and he had been grumpy before going down. So I was like, John, from the top of the stairs. I was just like whispering for my husband, but yelling, trying to get his attention. And he's, what? And I was like, my water broke. And he was like, what do we do? And I was like, I don't know. So we slowly got things ready. And then we woke him up and drove the 30 minutes over to the medical center, which is a hospital. And I remember being in a contraction as we were coming through the gate, and the poor guy was just staring at me, waiting for me to get my ID out. I was
Okay.
just like, hold on. Getting onto the base. And he kind of looked scared because he was like, what is going on? So I think it was like his first day or something, but it was funny. And then we get in the hospital, and things are going okay, just normal hospital stuff for a while. I had said it was okay to have residents come in and help. And so there was one resident, and he was a male, and he was there. And before the OB left that night, she had told me, because I got in the epidural, I ended up getting the epidural. And after the epidural, I stalled, and his heart rate started being affected. If I wasn't laying on my right hip, then his heart rate would drop really fast. So they were concerned about that. So they made me I stayed on, I think, for 3 hours, just laying on my right hip. They would come in and give me breaks every so often. But what that did was that made my right leg from my hip all the way through my toes. You know, when your foot goes to sleep and you have that pins and needles feeling? My whole leg was like that for 3 hours. It was awful. And I kept telling him, I'm in pain. Can we do something else? Like everything. And there was even one time where he rushed into everyone had to rush into the room because even though I was on my side, his heart just started dropping out of nowhere. And then the moment that they came in, his heart went back to normal. And no one knew what was going on. But they were watching and they were like, you can labor for a little bit longer, but I think this is going to end in C-section. And then I said, well, I want to labor for a little bit longer. And I keep trying. I had stalled at that point for a while. I was in a lot of pain and complaining a lot about it with no one really trying to help. And then after Sheila had gone home, because she lived near the thing, went home. And the intern came in by himself with no nurses. My husband I had sent home with my oldest for bedtime routine because I was like, we'll probably still be working on this in the morning. And so he went home, and because my oldest was getting scared, he didn't like all the nurses and stuff. He was getting really nervous about everything at the time. So I didn't want him to be scared. And then he came in and he was like really pushing for that C-section, really pushing for it. And honestly, I wasn't in a mental state where I could really truly say no anymore. I was in a lot of pain. No one was helping me and everything like that. Thankfully, the nurse happened to see him walk in there. So while he's trying to convince me to have the C-section, she came in there acting like she was just doing her normal thing. She didn't say anything to me, didn't say anything to him, just walked in, checked the monitors, and then walked out after he walked out. And at that point, I did say that I wanted to go ahead with it. So they called the OB back, and she came in with a nurse, and she said, I was told that he came in here by himself. And apparently that's a human rights violation because I get to have somebody else there as a witness. And that wasn't done. And then he was pushing for it. She said we could keep trying or we could go ahead with his C-section. And at that point, I was so tired and in so much pain. I was like, I want to go through with it. I have to go through with this. I can't keep being here. So we ended up doing the C-section. I had told them what I wanted. And this lovely pediatric nurse was in there. And I told her everything I wanted for Benji when he came out, my second. And I was like, I want him to breastfeed immediately on the OR table. And I was telling them both this really. And honestly, she was the only person who listened to everything I wanted. I said, I don't want to give him any formula. I don't want to have gestational diabetes. He might have low blood sugar. I don't know what's going to happen, but I want him to be able to be on my chest. I want him to feed. I want to see him through the clear sheet, everything like that. And I got to hold him on my chest. I did not get to feed him because I guess I'm guessing the intern probably put the tools where I couldn't breastfeed. Something was blocking it to where I couldn't breastfeed. They weren't going to allow that. So even after they said they would. So they didn't do that. I did get the clear sheet. I got to see him through the clear sheet when they pulled him out. And that was amazing. I loved that. And then my arms were starting to get tired. So I asked her to go ahead and take him so she could weigh him and all that stuff. And then I wanted him back. But before I could get him back, they found out that they cut my bladder when they did the incision to open me up. The anesthesiologist was not going to budge on allowing me to hold him again. He refused to do so. At this point, it'd been almost an hour. We waited, and then she came in and she said she needs to hold him. She needs to feed him. When he was born, his sugars were fine. But after an hour, since he hadn't eaten in that golden hour, his sugars started dropping drastically and fast. When they brought him to do cheek to cheek, he could see him. He was almost like passing out. His eyes kept closing and coming back open. He was doing those slow blinks. So you could tell it was really affecting him, not eating. And then his temperature was dropping really fast as well, which is why they ended up doing the cheek to cheek because they were trying to bring his temperature back up as well. But he would not let me hold him again. The nurse was battling it out for me, and they were yelling. They ended up yelling at each other over me, and it ended up being the OB who was like, everybody stop, everybody be quiet. This is my OR. Like that whole scene that you would see in Grey's Anatomy where they yell at each other and somebody has to come in and be like, nope, this is mine. I'm in charge. That happened.
Wow.
And then she just looked at me and she goes, I'm going to go ahead and sew. I didn't know this, but I'd sat there with my bladder just open, apparently, for a while. And she finally decided, I'm going to go ahead and close it. And then when the urologist comes in, he can just check it. He won't even have to touch anything. He'll just check it. And what had happened is everything had happened with during changeover from one urologist to the other. And it took them over an hour. He's outside. They took over an hour to do changeover. So that's what we were waiting on. So I ended up being in the OR for about 2 hours. I didn't get back to, he was born at 5:55 and I didn't get back to my room till just after 8, I think.
Wow.
And she told me, she said, I'm going to set you up. And then when we get the approval that everything is fine, he doesn't need to do anything, I'm going to close you up and we're going to run you and your baby back to the room because they didn't have space in the recovery room. So I had to go back to the room I was laboring in because they also didn't have a regular room for me either. They ran me back and they were like, we're going to get your baby attached to you as soon as we can. So they were able to do that. John missed the entire thing. He was at home and did not see my text message that I was gone. Did not get any of the calls because he was asleep. He was sleeping too deeply. He had the sound on, but he was just sleeping too deeply, which is fine. So at 8:30 or something, he had texted me and I had just gone back to the room and we had done our first feed or we're doing our first feed when he texted me and goes, I guess you're still laboring, like no baby yet kind of thing. And I just texted him a picture of our baby and I was like, he's here. Come whenever you're ready.
Oh my goodness.
So they jumped in the car and raced there.
I'm sure.
And everything ended fine. But then, because it doesn't end there, as John was literally in the motion of handing our baby to our oldest to hold the first time, the pediatrician came in and goes, we need to talk about possibly doing formula. And I remember going, no, we're not doing that. He goes, his sugars are low. And I go, yes, his sugars are low because he missed the golden hour. And now we're going to let it come up naturally. And we're going to use mom's milk to do that. And he was like, it doesn't have enough sugar in it. And if it doesn't come up, if it hits like 35 or something, like the number hits 35, then we're going to have to put an IV in him or do formula. And I was like, okay, no, we're not doing that because we had already had our first feed. And after the first feed, he went from 35 to 42. And I knew it was going to help if we gave it time. I was like, it dropped fast, but it needs to come up slow. We don't want to bring it up too fast. And we need to do this naturally. And I said, we're going to do that. And we're going to give mom's milk a chance. And that's it. That's all that's happening. And so he tried to say something, but then John goes, nope, my wife said what she said. We're doing what she said we're doing. That's it. You can leave now. So he left. And we didn't see him again the rest of this day. But yeah, so it was a fight to the very end, the very, very end with him. And I really felt like I was fighting the entire time.
Yeah.
It made my pregnancy really unenjoyable, something that I was already struggling with because hormonally I was already not the happiest. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was a lot heavier because of my not being healthy before getting pregnant. So feeling that extra weight of a baby just made me feel even more awful. Yeah. So it really affected things because I feel like I didn't connect to Benji or to my second enough at first until I found out who he was and we had a name for him. Once I had a name for him, I was able to connect with him. I felt better and connect with him easier. But I do feel like for that first 20 weeks or so, I didn't get to connect with him because I was fighting so much against all this stuff.
Did you have any issues with your bladder?
Afterwards, in the beginning, yes, just because I couldn't hold it as well afterwards. I had to have a catheter for 2 weeks after, so I had to go home with a catheter. And that was very traumatic for me because it was very embarrassing. I didn't want to go outside, so I didn't go outside.
Yeah. And
And we
that's
li-
hard in a immediate postpartum. You need to be getting the sun, you need to be getting out some. You need all of that to help you because you're already dealing with fighting the big hormonal drops then.
Yeah, and we lived in Colorado too. So we lived in Colorado Springs at the time, and our house was a two-story, but so were the houses around us too. So even going in the backyard, you had no privacy. Everyone could see into your backyard. So I didn't even want to go out there. It was pretty sunny
Mhm.
most days, but I didn't want to go out. And it's not that I didn't if I wasn't forced to, but I didn't like to be out there. And it was very traumatic in the fact that it was so embarrassing. And I felt like it was so unnecessary. So I really could feel myself slipping a lot, possibly had my husband not been so supportive. And he was born in 2020. So with COVID and everything, he wasn't working as often. Even after his paternity leave, he was only working 2 days one week and then 3 days the next week. So he was off a lot still. If we hadn't had that time, I could have really easily fallen into that postpartum depression.
Mm,
But he was very supportive of my healing, and he was the one who would make me go outside at times
good.
just to sit outside and get fresh air because he knew I needed it. But he would do little things too, where he would make sure to when I would put the baby down for the night, I would go take a shower, and he would sneak up and bring and refill my water bottle, and he would bring me snacks to have during the night, mostly healthy-ish, and then he would always have a little chocolate or two mixed in there, and then he would just sneak out quietly. So when I came out, it was all set up for me, ready to go.
Aw,
And that helped a lot during that time. I really needed that. Just those little things, the little unspoken things as
for
my
sure.
pick me up for those times. And he really kept me out of that postpartum depression because
Good.
could feel myself falling into it and I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And then I just got angry
Mm,
for a long time.
that
And then
makes sense.
I just put it away. Once we left and moved to Germany, I had packed it away and I didn't really deal with it, I don't think.
Okay. So then you went to Germany. What happened in Germany?
Yeah, so then we got the chance to move to Germany, and a lot happened because it was 2021 and it was COVID crazy and everything. So that was all really stressful moving during that time, especially to a different country who,
Mm,
believe it or not, was even more strict than the States and stayed more strict and was one of the last countries to really fully open up again. So it was really hard. But after a while, John started asking me, okay, when are we going to be ready for another baby? And I just kept telling him, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. But I had started working out after Benji before we moved. And I found this one company who was amazing. And it was made for mamas who wanted to work out in pregnancy initially. That's how it started. And it's become this whole thing of anyone who wants to work who doesn't have a lot of time. So if you're a police officer, military, or emergency responders or anything like that, a mom with kids running around, you could do it, and you could do it at home. And it's called street parking. And you can find that streetparking.com if you wanted to learn anything about that, or find me on Facebook or whatever and ask me, I can tell you about it. But I started doing their workouts because my husband had a lot of stuff in the gym, and it was easy workouts that I could do with equipment or without equipment. And so it was a good place to slowly start. So I started building myself up and I started working out because I decided if I was going to have another baby, I knew I wasn't done, then I had to start working on myself and I had to get healthy so that maybe I could have a healthy pregnancy. So that was my goal from the very beginning,
nice.
was to work out towards my next pregnancy to be able to have a healthier and better pregnancy and hopefully a better outcome. And so I didn't really start dabbling into midwifery or home birth or really even birthing at all until a lot later. But I spent a year or two building consistency and working out. And then I started working on my nutrition. I finally got there mentally where I could work on my nutrition. And so I did that for about a year or two. And then I decided during that, I had a workout where I was literally, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was how intense the workout was or what, but I just stopped. At the end of the workout, I just broke down crying. And I realized that I never dealt fully with what happened with Benji. And if I wanted to have another baby, because it was time, I was starting to feel like it was time to start really considering it. And of course, Sean had been asking about it off and on, and I knew he was ready. So I was like, oh man, I've got to heal from this. I got to find a way to do that. And I did. My way of healing was I just started building knowledge on what went wrong, what choices I could have made differently, and how I could have stand firm on those choices to work towards a better. I knew I couldn't change what happened, how I was treated, the decisions I made, or anything like that, but I could do better for the next baby. And by that, I could be knowledgeable. So I started learning. And then I started being able to heal because I started being able to see what happened and who was truly to blame, and that I wasn't to blame for everything. Were there decisions that I made that I should have and could have made differently? Yes. And those are decisions. There always will be, and there always is. And those are decisions that I can hold myself accountable for. But the coercion, the yelling, the abusive, and in those situations, I was not to blame for. And I had to be able to place the blame and then learn and then pray on it and forgive them. Even if they didn't ask for it, I had to come to that forgiveness and forgive them for those things. And I still use it as a learning tool. And so other people have gone through certain things like that too. So sometimes I use it as an example to point it out if they don't realize it and they're asking for help and they don't realize that they're being abused in those situations. I will, and it does still fire me up when I hear other women going through it. But I still do forgive them and I don't want anything obviously bad for them. And I hope they can learn from it, from what all happened. But yeah, I had to learn to move forward and to accept the blame that I deserved that I needed to accept, forgive myself, and then forgive them as well, and place the blame where the blame goes. I couldn't take all the blame on myself anymore or hold it in anymore. And so once I came to that realization, I started learning. And that's when I started looking into other options on how I could birth, where I could birth, and how I could keep things better and more peaceful for myself and my baby. Because it's important. We're a team, we're connected, literally. So I have to work for the both of us because my baby can't fight for us. So I have to fight for us and do what's best for me. And so that's when I came and started listening to certain podcasts and looking into things, researching on my own, all of that stuff. And of course, everything that came out with COVID too also helps because then I learned how to research all these things too.
Right.
So where I didn't know that I didn't know how to before, because we were also struggling with my husband. So with him and the COVID vaccine and all that stuff. So we had been doing a lot of research. And so that really taught me how to do the research. And then I went off and started researching stuff on my own and doing this on my own. Good. And initially I didn't even tell my husband about it. I don't know why I do things like that, but I don't. When I have some big decisions and things that are really weighing on my heart, I just keep it close to chest, do all of my research. And then I come in and I'm like, hi, surprise. I've been doing all this research and I want to do this way. Let's do things this way. So he was like, midwifery, what is that? And he wasn't really fully on board with home birth at first. Ask your dad. And because he didn't really know much about it, but I was like, I have done all this research. It's fine, whatever. I was like, but I'm not going back to the hospital. I'm not doing it. And I was pretty set on that. I was like, I'm going to use them for what they're used for. If there's an emergency, I'll go to the hospital. Yeah. But if there's not an emergency, I'm not going. And that's really where when I started learning about psychological birth and how birth is a natural thing. And I don't know why it never occurred to me before, but it is natural and it is something that we do and can do and our bodies are made to do. So that's what brought me to midwifery and to home birth.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were in Germany, did you start trying to find a midwife there?
I did. There, midwives are in plenty. It's the culture there. Because I lived in Germany. I didn't just live in Germany in your big bases. I lived in a very tiny base that was in what we call the tri-border area. And that's because there's three. Take it to your dad, please. I'm busy.
Do you know because
Is he here?
he's outside because vacation joined it.
Yeah, the way it works there is I lived in the half mile from the Netherlands and I lived about 15 minutes from Belgium. So it was a very unique place. But I was able to choose, do I want to give birth on the Netherlands side or do I want to give birth on Germany's side? But they both kind of work in a way where you see the midwife, even if you're going to be birthing in the hospital or by OB, you see a midwife for all your appointments. And then when it comes to birthing, then you would switch over to the OB. But the midwife still has a lot to say. Like I had a friend, she had a midwife and she gave birth by the OB in Germany. And the OB had suggested doing Pitocin because she had started to stall for a little longer than they liked. And the midwife goes, "It's your decision. What do you want to do?" And she goes, "I want to wait and see if I can continue, if I stay stalling or if I eventually move forward." And she goes, "Okay, we're not doing Pitocin right now." And the OB was like, "I think," and she goes, "Nope, we're not doing Pitocin right now." And the OB just walked off. It's that way there. And it's slowly changing to where midwives have less and less power there and OBs are getting more and more power like it is here. But for now, it's still more midwife care.
Yeah.
And even after C-sections, like I was trying for a VBAC with my second, and I was going to try with the VBAC for this one. They still, no matter how many C-sections you have there in Germany and the Netherlands, they still like to let you try for the VBAC.
Good.
Just gonna adjust my thing here for a second. Let's see. Can you see me? Nope. There we go. I'm going to have to take the baby and feed him a little bit. But I'm trying to set this up. There we go. Gosh. He's actually good. I don't think it's going to stay like that.
Oh, we'll fix it.
If you don't touch it. Nobody touch anything. What you doing? Yeah. All right. He's good. Yeah, he's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I was definitely going to use a midwife there. And it was quite funny because I ended up getting pregnant pretty much immediately, a little sooner than we expected, actually. But so I ended up finding a midwife and I had to get a referral because we're military. So we had to get a referral. And I go in there and I go, "Can I have the referral go out to that I want a midwife?" And he goes, "I've never heard that before." And I was like, "You do realize what country you're living in, right? Like midwife care is pretty much the care here. That's huge here. I don't know how you've never heard of somebody requesting a midwife." But so he was like, "Sure, yeah, I'll have it made out to the midwife." So they did. And it actually got denied initially. And I remember seeing that it got denied and going, "Oh no, here goes the fight all over again." I remember just feeling that dread of now I'm gonna have to fight. And I remember just going into full blown tears. And John's, "Just call him. You haven't even called him and asked them yet. Just call him." So I remember the poor girl on the phone. I don't even know her name, but bless her, because I unleashed everything. I was like, "Y'all's policies are trash." I was in full blown tears on the phone. I had a traumatic experience with OBs. I don't want to go back. Like how I'm in the work, I could literally get the best midwifery care in the world. I was like, the Netherlands is the #1 midwifery care in the world. Why can't I get approved here to get this great care and everything? And she was just so sweet. She goes, I am so sorry. Let me just talk to the German team real quick. And so she talked to the German medical team and they said she wants care in the Netherlands and she can get it because of her location. So I don't know why it was denied. Try contacting the Netherlands team. So they contacted the Netherlands team and they said they don't know why it got denied. They shouldn't have been denied. And yeah. And so that they were going to look at it and they were going to expedite this referral. So they expedited the investigation on the referral, and immediately within a couple hours, I got a notification that it had changed to accepted. So
Yay.
I was able to get midwifery care. I had a great team over there, and they were amazing. They were really sweet, very knowledgeable on everything. They were completely fine on everything. And one of the things that I wish OBs would say here that they don't was they would offer things that I would deny, like certain vaccines or shots or whatever. And they would say this phrase, they would say, do you want more? Do you want me to tell you any more about them? Or have you already done your research and you made your decision? And I would say, I've already done my research. I know what this is about and I understand both sides and I don't want it. And they say, okay, sounds great.
Nice.
Let's move on. But they would give you the option of giving you more knowledge instead of completely shutting you down.
Yeah.
And they were always positive about it. They never made you feel bad or tried to force information on you, but they gave you the option of giving you the information, which was really nice and a very interesting take on things, which I really appreciated.
When did you guys find out you were going to move back to the States?
So we found out we were pregnant in February. Excuse me, I gotta feed him. But we found out, we knew we couldn't stay past August of 2024. So we knew we'd known the whole time that we were going to be moving around that time. But we just didn't know where. We didn't get orders until 3 months before August. So we only had orders for 3 months on knowing where we were going to go. But we knew our options in February, I think just right after we found out about that I was pregnant. We found out what our options were because being overseas, we got to pick where we wanted to go next. We got to make a list of where we wanted to go.
Nice.
And generally they will honor most of them because you were overseas. So you actually they will actually try really hard to honor it. And I think we had 6 bases we could pick from. And then, okay. All right. And then we got our 3rd pick, I think it was.
Okay.
And which was here in Dias. And we knew we would be coming here in August. But then we also knew we would be pretty late in pregnancy. So it was interesting having to be like, oh no, are we going to be able to fly? When are we going to be able to fly? Do we need to try to leave sooner? Because if we had left later, if they had told us that we could stay longer, like 3 months longer, it would have taken us almost a year to get all the documents for him. So we would have pretty much, between the 2 countries, we would have had to get all the documents and stuff, and it would have taken us almost a year. So we would have pretty much just needed to extend a year. So I was like, oh no, are we going to be able to fly, or how's this going to work out? Because you can apply for a 30-day to try and ask if they can move it forward, but then they could say, oh, we're going to move you the other way instead. So we're like, oh no. Thankfully, looking at everything, I knew we'd be able to fly. So I was like, it's great. I was like, but now I have to try to find a midwife. And that's really hard late in pregnancy.
Yeah.
And especially in here in Abilene, because it doesn't feel like there's an abundance of midwives out this way. So
There's not.
it there was one person that I was turned to every time, but we found out that we were coming in, I want to say it was May, and it was like May 7th or something. And that we found out that we were coming. And then the person who I kept getting turned to, who took TRICARE, took our insurance, the midwife, she posted like May 1st or May 5th or something, just like days before, that she had no more for the year, no more spots for the year. So I was like, that's nice. I keep getting referred to her, but and so then came the whole thing of, now we're going to have to pay out of pocket if we're going to do this.
True.
And so obviously finances are always a concern. And we wanted to make sure we could do it smartly. And I was a little nervous about that because my husband is a very thrifty person. He does not like to spend money. And so I was a little worried about how much this was going to cost and how he was going to take that news and things like that, which he was really great. He was like, no, we're still doing this. We're going to find it. It's going to work out and we'll be okay with it. He obviously wanted to make sure that the finances, he wanted to know where the money was going. What was it going towards, to make sure that it made financial sense. But we were going to do it regardless. So he was very supportive in that way. And I was actually surprised by that, which was nice. It was nice to have that, because he just did not want me to, he cares enough about me. He does not want me to go back to that one space I was in, and was willing to do anything to do that. Yeah. So it was good. So then we get here or we're looking, and I interview a few, and I even interviewed because I was starting to lose hope, or if we lose faith in finding someone to be our midwife who would take us, or who wasn't full already. And I talked to Jennifer, and she was willing to take us, but it just, I don't know, there was something about it. Not that I didn't love her, because she was amazing. She's an amazing midwife, but just something didn't fully connect there. I don't know what it was. I still don't really know too much of what it was, but it just didn't fully connect there. And then we had talked to a birthing center, which John was like, oh, that would be perfect. And then we found out that the birthing center was actually partnered with a family practitioner who would not allow somebody who's had 2 C-sections now to do that. And I was like, are you serious? You're a midwife? And like, because she even talked about how she would if she was on her own, she would fully support it, but she couldn't do it because of her partner. And I was like, how's a family practitioner stopping you? This is not even her specialty. So that was really disappointing. And I was losing hope. And I finally told John, I said, we may be just free birthing. Like, we may be doing this on our own. And we need to be prepared and open-minded towards that, because that was the one thing my husband wanted. I said, we can do this on our own, or we could have a midwife there. What would make you feel more comfortable? And I wanted him to be just as comfortable as I was with this decision. And he was not really, he was willing to do it if we had to, but he was more comfortable with a midwife. And then somebody, I don't remember who it was, I think it was the birthing center actually, who mentioned you. Or no, she mentioned somebody else that used to be here. Who was your friend? I forget her name. Who had moved to Dallas. She was in the process of moving to Dallas at the time.
Yeah.
And so she was in the process of moving. So she was the one who said, I know somebody who might be willing to take you in. And she mentioned you. And so that's how I got in touch with you. It was because she referred me, because she wasn't taking any more clients in the area because she was moving. And then,
yep.
But that you may be willing to do. And then that's when I contacted you and interviewed with you. And thank you so much for taking us.
It was my pleasure. Yeah, so there was logistics a little bit there, because you guys were in Germany and I was here, and we interviewed and had to talk about all the things. that we do as midwives. We go through all the history, everything together. And
Yeah.
then at this point, you were pretty far into your pregnancy. So then trying to establish relationship, because so much of midwifery care is establishing relationship and building trust and all the other things, the vitals and the safety and all of that. Yes, we're taught that really well, but that's not at the core of our care. The core of our care is relationship building. So that was something that we had discussed, that we're like, hey, we're going to have to work on this, and we're going to have that extra
Mm-hmm.
appointments, and we're going to do several more Zoom appointments while you're in Germany so we can get to know each other better, and then meet you as soon as you get here and all of that.
Yep. Yeah, it was crazy. That's something that really paid off in the end. Because even with the midwifery that I had in the Netherlands, I don't think that relationship was super built because I didn't see somebody new every appointment. But at my different appointments, there was a few appointments where I didn't get to see the same midwife each time. I saw somebody else within the practice. And of course, language barriers. So they speak really good English in the Netherlands, but still, there's things that get lost in translation.
Yeah.
And I remember too, I had a little setback. I don't know if I told you about it, but I
Maybe
did
not.
have a little setback after we got here. I was in the process of trying to translate. I was using Google Translate to try to translate my records for you after we got here already.
Right.
And I saw where they put that I was obese in the paperwork. And they never mentioned it to me before, which is probably a good thing. But they never mentioned to me before. But I remember being so struck by that because I was weighing significantly less than I was when I got pregnant with Benji. And I was just barely over that obese line with him when I got pregnant with him. So I knew I was overweight, but I didn't think I was obese anymore when I got pregnant.
Yeah.
And I had been working out so hard and so much and for so long that, and eating a lot better, that I didn't look obese.
Yeah.
And it really drew me back a bit. And John had to remind me that the scale really doesn't mean anything. And that's
Right.
probably why they didn't say anything, because I was fit. I wasn't obese fat. I was fit. I had the muscle, and I wasn't what I was before. I wasn't unhealthy. I was very healthy. And when I got pregnant, and that was intentional, and to not let the word, seeing the word affect me
Sure.
as harshly, because it was I was at a very different way when I weighed that much. So it, I cried for a long time that day when I saw that. And I had to really bring myself back and remind myself of all the hard work. Was I exactly where I wanted to be when I got pregnant? Probably not. Still had some work that I was trying to do, but I wasn't unhealthy when I got pregnant. And that would make a difference. And that was making a difference because my entire pregnancy, I was very healthy.
So
I,
when you had those thoughts after you translated that and you were reading it and you were struggling with that for a little bit, and obviously John was helping you with that as well, what else did you do to, okay, we're going to move past this?
it was really just self reflection. It was a lot of praying and reminding myself of where I was
Yeah.
and where I came from, and just
Good.
reminding myself in the present, and then reminding myself the differences and how I was feeling. The way I was feeling, I had still continued to work out during my pregnancy. I still exercised. I still did my street parking workouts. I modified them to where I did less weight or things like that. And I just reminded myself that before that, before making that whole life change, before getting pregnant with my second with Benji, I would have never been able to do any of that. I would have not
Yeah.
been able to work out during my pregnancy. I actually was supposed to with Benji before, when I found out I was pregnant with him. I was supposed to go that morning to a CrossFit gym to see if I matched with that gym and that box. And I ended up not going. And then when I found out I was pregnant that morning, after canceling, I didn't feel comfortable working out because I hadn't been working out. So I didn't feel like it was safe anymore because I hadn't been working out. So my body wasn't conditioned to do. And now my body is conditioned that I could work out every day if I wanted to. And so I had to remind myself where I'd come from and where I was now and the mental health that I was in as well, because that all makes a difference. And the fact that my pregnancy had been so healthy, and if I had stayed in that same state that I was before, I wouldn't have had such a good pregnancy up to that point. So I had to really self-talk to myself, look in the mirror, and remember who I am now versus where I was, who I was then, and how different.
Good.
So it was just a lot of self-talk and a lot of talk from John too, uplifting.
So how'd the rest of the pregnancy go?
It felt flawless. Like this entire pregnancy just felt flawless. There were no issues. I didn't get that many ultrasounds, which was hard to do because we all want to see our babies and we all want to see everybody. But I didn't get any after the after the 20 weeks. After we found out the gender or after the anatomy, I got no more. And it all made things very exciting, to be honest, in the end. Good. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And I think my biggest thing was the big differences in how involved my kids could be if they wanted to be and how involved they were. Benji was there listening to the heartbeat and he was finding the baby's heart and doing all the things. And he was so hands-on and he loved every bit of it because he had been asking for 2 years for this baby. Leading up to it, he has been wanting to be a big brother for so long. And so giving him the gift of being so involved in the pregnancy and the buildup, I think that changed everything for me because I wanted that for James, my oldest, with my second, and he didn't get to do anything. He just got to sit there in the room quietly watching everything that happened and watching things unfold and watching me get yelled at and abused. And it just wasn't the same experience for him. And it wasn't an experience that I wanted for him. So being able to change that and give that changed my pregnancy completely too, because, oh my gosh, it made it so much fun. It made it fun for everyone. It made it fun. It made the whole experience blissful. I was feeling healthy. I was feeling good. Everything felt natural. And I was able to follow my instincts. And I think that was the whole journey of it, was learning to get my voice back and follow my own instincts. And then obviously surrendering to what happened and how this is so new and just surrendering to what was to come with this pregnancy. So it was so much fun. It was so blissful. It was peaceful. It was just, oh my gosh, I can't even describe coming from such a traumatic event to this was just a total 180. And it was exactly what I wanted it to be. Even though it ended in C-section, because then spoiler alert, it does, but it didn't damper anything because this was completely a successful birth experience for me. So
awesome to hear.
So yeah, my rest of my pregnancy went great and I would have never changed a thing, not a single decision. And then it comes to birth. It was time to give birth. I remember waiting, and I do remember it starting to get hard. It actually didn't start getting hard for me as far as waiting, because we all get hit that wall. We all hit that wall until about 39 and a half weeks, probably. I started feeling it. I was starting having more days where I'm like, I feel very pregnant and I'm tired and I'm ready to have this baby. When is he going to come? And having to remind myself to be patient, that he comes when he's ready and he's just not ready. So I do remember hitting that wall around 39 and a half weeks finally. But I also remember hitting that wall around 37 or 38 weeks with James. And then I I was just grumpy the whole time with Benji. I was ready for him to come the day I found out. So I was like, all right, great. It's going to be a long road. But this one, it was much later. And I think it was because I wasn't constantly watching him. I wasn't constantly on pins and needles. I wasn't constantly being monitored. I wasn't constantly doing the whole ultrasounds every so often. Just let it go. And I didn't have many concerns, I don't think, if I had any at all during the whole thing. So not stressing over it and just going with what felt natural, making decisions that felt natural and right really helped me get to that wall, I think, a little later. And it's funny because my gestational diabetes baby, my second baby, Benji, he was my smallest baby. He was born at 7 pounds, right on the dot. And he was my smallest baby. And I felt the heaviest with him. I felt heavy from the very beginning. I felt so awful, so heavy. Saw every bit of his weight that I was carrying. But for Eli, I didn't feel that way at all. And Eli, another spoiler, was my biggest baby. So it was fun.
Yeah.
It was nice having that.
Do you want to talk about labor?
Yeah, labor was interesting. So for about a week, I had been having contractions that I didn't know I was having. I didn't even know I was having contractions. I would have these little cramp sessions that would come and go, but they were so unnoticeable. There's a little bit of pressure with them, but they just, I don't know. I thought they were Braxton Hicks, really. They were just some tightening. They didn't really feel super crampy. And then one day you came for an appointment and you go, and I laid down, we were going to go find the heartbeat. And you go, oh, you're having a contraction. We'll just wait for that to pass. And I go, that was a contraction. That's a contraction. And she goes, yeah, aren't you feeling in it? Anything? And I was like, it was fun. And then I do remember having one concern not long. I think it was probably after that a little bit, where maybe it was right before that appointment. But we were going to the movie.
Yeah.
And I was having prodromal labor. And so I texted you, I was like, I think I'm having prodromal labor. And I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly, but prodromal labor. And so you were just like, yeah, just relax. You tell me all the things. Texting me, and I was like, what about the movie theater right now? Thankfully, they had seats that you
I was like, go take a warm bath. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. You're like, take a warm bath. And I was like, I can't do that right now. I'm at the movie theater. But I had my feet kicked up because they had the seats that recline. And so I had it all the way reclined. And Benji was laying on me. We're just enjoying the movie. And I was trying to relax that way. And so then we got through it. I just did all the things and relaxed and try not to worry about it too much. And those were a little bit stronger contractions for sure. And then I had been having the unnoticeable ones for a week. And then was it a Sunday? I can't remember. I think, no, it was Saturday. It was Sunday morning. I think it was Sunday morning. Sunday morning, I lost my mucus plug, I think. It was Sunday morning. And Sunday morning, I lost my mucus plug. And I've been losing it slowly throughout the day, little by little, and had a little bit of bloody show in it. It was just a little pinkish. It wasn't anything big. And hey, you. I know. Don't yell at me. That's good. So then around, I think it had to be Monday morning, I think it had to be. All throughout the day, I lost my mucus plug little by little, and it was pinkish, so there's a little bit of bloody show in it. But nothing really was happening. And so I just went about my day. I was still going out to the zoo and
Yeah, you were still doing all the things.
I was doing all the things. I went to go a week before. I had gone to Dallas, drove to Dallas. We rode to Dallas to pick up a new 8-week-old puppy. So if we weren't moving moving countries in the middle of or at the end of a pregnancy wasn't crazy enough, let's throw an 8-week-old puppy into the mix. And I had just gotten my household goods in too, not long before that. So I still had boxes everywhere. My house is a mess the entire time. But yeah, so yeah. And then we just started talking.
I love it.
So then my water ends up breaking the next morning about 5:30, I think is when I texted you. And it wasn't the same at all as my previous two. Wasn't at all. I had a feeling that it was going to happen sometime that day and probably at night. I had done a lot of preparation on my bed and everything to make sure that I didn't destroy my brand new mattress. And then it didn't do the same.
Not at all.
I didn't feel the ballooning like I did with my second. Thankfully I was wearing a Depends diaper already. I had thought about doing that night. I was like, oh, I'm going to sleep in this just in case. Never know. And so I had it on and I felt something. I felt like something punched me from the inside. It wasn't like a pop, like a balloon, but it was like a punch. Just like a punching bag. And I go, oh, I bet that's my water. I just knew. I just go, oh, I bet that was my water. And so I got up and right when I stood up, I felt it start all coming out. And I was like, yep, that was definitely my water. And I was able to go to the bathroom and just let it all flow out.
Yeah.
So I texted John, hey, my water broke. Come in here, because then the contractions started coming immediately, which is pretty natural for me. That has happened with all my pregnancies, where right after I don't have any contractions other than the contractions I was having before for a week with him. But with my other two, I didn't have contractions at all until after my water broke.
Okay.
And of course, because my water broke, they're a lot stronger. So I knew they were going to be coming soon, and they started coming immediately. And I think before that, I had been timing some of the contractions I had been having before my water broke, and they were pretty far apart. They were like 8 to 10 minutes apart. And then after my water broke, they immediately changed to 1 to 2 minutes apart. I remember that. Yes. I remember they started coming, and they started coming fast. So I was thinking, yes, this is going to go fast. And they were getting pretty strong. So I was definitely noticing them. So John came in there. He's like, what do I need to do? And I was like, let's go ahead and start blowing up the pool and getting things squared away. And then I had texted you. You were trying to call me, but I was walking down the stairs. So I couldn't answer because I was walking down the stairs.
Because you had told me the last thing you said is they were getting really intense.
Yeah,
so
and they were.
I jumped in my car and was headed your way.
I know. And so then I was like, you need to call her back. So he called you back because I was like, she's trying to call and I know she needs me to answer, but I'm trying to walk down these stairs and I can't get down these stairs and talk at the same time. He's coming down the stairs. He was trying to blow that up, calling you. So then we just updated you on where I was. They were really strong. They were getting strong, but I feel like I'm weak when it comes to that. Like I don't know if they're really as strong or if I'm just kind of, oh, it's hurt.
No, I think you're super strong, and they were definitely strong.
And so then we got the pool ready, and you showed up pretty quickly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, got you in there pretty quick.
Yeah. And then I labored in the pool for a while. I don't know how long, but I labored there for a while. And that was nice. I think my favorite was John putting his hands on and giving counter pressure on my hips and back. That felt really good. And it wasn't long after I got into the pool that Benji woke up and was waddling his sleepy way down. And he was so excited. I know he was.
I know he was too.
And he was so good.
So cute.
Yeah, he was so sweet. He was very comforting during that time and caring and loving. And I remember James coming down going, Benji, this is going to get gross. Let's go upstairs. And I just, no, because I wanted to laugh, but I was also in the middle of contraction, so I couldn't. It was funny. I remember that moment with him. I don't know why. It stood out to me, but James was like, nope, I'm out, which is okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where things are really intense. It was really strong and things were hurting a lot more than I felt like they should be. And contractions were coming really fast, a lot closer than probably they should be. And I remember you asking if you could check me. And I know that like I had said no, that I didn't want to be checked during labor, but I don't remember everything exactly and how all it went. But I ended up getting checked and you said I was only at a 3. And I remember thinking, I just knew in that moment that something was really wrong.
Yeah.
That's when we got out of the birthing pool. And you suggested I lay on the couch on the side to see if that helped. And it really didn't help. And I just kept, no, something was just really, it was either wrong or it was going to go wrong. And I don't know which one it was, but it was just something was either about to happen or had already started happening. And things weren't right. And I just knew I needed to go in to the OR. I needed to go in. I needed to be transferred. I needed the C-section. And I remember saying, I think it's time we go. And y'all both did exactly what I wanted y'all to do. And tried to say, you can still do this and be encouraging and everything. But I just knew in that moment, like, this wasn't my story. This wasn't how we ended this. And it was time to go. And I had told you, because I remember that being a big thing in our interview, was not being closed off to that feeling.
Yeah.
Because trauma can sometimes make you do that.
True. Absolutely,
But
it can.
I think at that point I knew that I needed it. And I don't want to say that it's feeling a failure or a regret didn't start sneaking in, because it did. And I think it always will in the first moments of not being successful at going into the home birth. But I knew it was time to go, and I was using the hospital for what it was meant to be. It was an emergency. It was time to go. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So I remember just apologizing to everyone, I think, as I was walking out the door. And poor Jennifer, she was stuck here putting a 8-week-old puppy up in the kennel and cleaning up after everything. And I just felt so bad. But
the thing is, too, like your contractions were on top of each other and they were so intense. And you had just very little break in between them. And although your vitals were perfect and his vitals were perfect, there's something was still off for those to be that intense and that on top of each other and you to only be 3 centimeters.
Yeah. And then what was interesting was we went to the hospital. And I remember you saying you called them. You said we were going to take us straight back. Everything was, we were going to go right back. And for me, that meant that we were going straight back to the OR. Apparently for the OR, for the hospital, that meant waiting 2 hours. So for blood work, they obviously did not feel like it was an emergency. And that was I think that's my thing. And the end of it was they want to blame things. The system wants to blame things on home birth and midwifery a lot of times. But all these things that they are worried about during pregnancy, when you get pregnant, when it comes down to it, they don't always act like it's an emergency, or like they're concerned in the moment when it's actually happening. But we went to the hospital and I am angry, very angry. I know I was so awful to everyone.
You were also still dealing with contractions on top of each other.
Very intense. But I think what really upset me was that I was having this pain. I was told I was going to go back to the OR immediately. They had one ready, and that wasn't happening. And why was I having to wait? Because something is obviously wrong. But I couldn't really express much because I was having contractions on top of each other, and they were so strong.
Right.
So I had a hard time doing that. And that's why I'm so grateful you were there, because you were so patient. And you were making like, oh, maybe we should try to do this, or could we do this, or whatever. And you were very calm the entire time. And I was screaming and yelling at everybody. I was like, get me back to the OR, make this stop. This is absolutely awful. Someone help me. And we ended up going back. The part that really made me angry was she kept asking to check me. The one OB kept coming in and asking to check me. And I kept telling her no, like I was already a 3. I know I'm not 9 to 10 centimeters at this point. I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling listened to for anybody except for you and John at this point. But they were refusing to give me anything to even try to help unless they checked me. So finally I relented to the check and I told her, I said, I'm not going to be 9 to 10 centimeters. And the only reason why I relented to it was on the chance that I somehow magically jumped within the 20 minutes to 9 to 10 centimeters.
Yeah.
They told me I could have an epidural and be able to get a chance to push.
Which surprised us.
It surprised, it surprised all of us in there that they said that. And so that's the only reason why I relented to it, because by the chance I might actually get, the chance isn't gone. I could have this baby vaginally. Right. And I was a 2. I had gone from a 3 back down to a 2. And in that moment, I wanted to scream, it's because I'm here. It's because I'm in the hospital. I didn't, but I knew that walking back into that hospital was going to make my body climb up from the prior trauma and the prior everything. I just knew. And I know that's the reason. In my heart, I just know that's the reason why I went back down to a 2. Because I know that doesn't really happen very often, where you go backwards. But it happened. And I knew it. I remember thinking in my head, I don't know if I said it out loud or not. I remember thinking, I told you I wasn't that far. And I don't remember if I said that or not, but I was yelling at everybody.
I don't remember either.
I don't know.
I just remember we were like, okay, then take us back for a C-section.
Yeah. I was like, then let's go. Why are we still waiting? We're still waiting for blood work. And I'm like, what if I had, in my head, I was sitting here thinking, what if I had come from a car accident? Would we be waiting here for blood work for 2 hours? What if I wasn't from here? What do you do in these emergency situations? Do you wait 2 hours for blood work to come back? No, you would have taken me right back. And then we get back there and it was something that was emergent. I had ruptured. My uterus had ruptured. I had a true rupture. And I don't know, I don't know what you were told, but I was told it wasn't very big and it was put off like it wasn't that big of a deal. Right? Like the way he just told me about it, like it was very minor, not a big deal at all or anything like that. But I remember the one thing that did make them freak out was how big he was. They weren't expecting him to, none of us were expecting him to be so big. He was 9 pounds, 14 ounces, almost 10 pounds. And so the first thing I remember, the one doctor that I had yelled at, who I should have been like, no, you're not working on me. I should have said something, but I think because of the contractions being so on top of each other, I didn't care at that point. I just wanted relief. Which, by the way, the spinal, I got it immediately, and I was so happy. And there's a few things I wish I would have, if I had gone back, I would have done a little differently. I wish I would have fought harder for you to be in the room until John's there, because ultimately I'm the patient. He may be the OB, but I have some say in who's in that room, not just him. I get to say who my witnesses are, and he doesn't get to say. So
you got in it for a second.
Yes, you did. I remember you like staying there just hovering, even though he tried to kick you out already. You were hovering there for as long as you could. So I appreciate that. But so I should have kicked that one doctor, kept her from working on me, but I didn't. And I remember her freaking out and looking over the thing going, did you have gestational diabetes? Like just immediately, all because of his weight, and his sugar was a little low and it was fine. But again, he was a 35, I think. Same number as Benji was when we had sugar issues with him.
And you got it to boost up. You got him nursing and everything was great.
Yep. And so I knew that his sugar being low wasn't a problem anyways. Yeah. And I didn't have gestational diabetes. I had no issues with any of that. I had no issues with my sugars. So I wasn't concerned at all when they mentioned that. And she freaked out. Like she had this sense of urgency in her voice when she asked me. And I don't even remember what I said in the moment, but I know that I didn't remember about my sugar levels. I was like, I don't know. But so it's probably like, I don't know, whatever. But I just remember thinking it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Why are you freaking out? What's wrong with you? Stop freaking out. And again, with him, the numbers boosted right up. We had no issues bringing him up. Mama's milk did great, did exactly what it was supposed to do. And it came up slowly and naturally. But by the end of the day, it was up. Yeah. I just remember that being such a big deal. But then I also remember thinking to myself, like, wow, my last one, they cut my bladder. Y'all didn't even cut my bladder. How did you avoid cutting my bladder, but cut through the same incision? How did that happen? If my bladder is adhered to my uterus and it was cut before, how is it that you missed it? There were some things that were good from it too. I didn't cut it again. And I was like, that's crazy. But it just did make me think of like, how did they do it and you didn't? This is crazy. But yeah, so then he was born and we brought his sugars up within 24 hours and no one questioned it. Everyone was fine with me breastfeeding. They did question it a little bit. They showed some concern for getting his sugars up with breast milk and recovery. There was one nurse who did.
When I was there, who mentioned one. Yeah. So how did your recovery go?
So after the surgery, like things were fine. I felt great after surgery immediately. I do remember when they were closing me up, backtracking a little bit, looking at John and saying, they're trapping gas. I can feel the gas being trapped. With James, I had trapped gas from the C-section. And I remember the feeling. I couldn't explain it to you now, but when it started happening again, I remembered it from when they were closing me up with James and feeling this like bubble in my stomach almost. And I felt that same feeling again when they were closing me up after his. And I remember going, they're trapping gas again. And I remember it being so painful and so difficult to release that gas.
Yeah, it is hard after surgery like that.
After surgery. So I was like expecting the same issue to happen. And so immediately when we got back to my room, I was like, I need Gas X. Like I need something to help me pass this gas. Because I knew that's what I needed last time. And I didn't get it immediately. They tried to help me pass it naturally, but I ended up needing Gas X and the Gas X worked with a hot shower. So I worked kind of hard to get up on my feet so I could take the hot shower, have the Gas X, get this gas out. And unfortunately, none of that worked. I was walking within a couple hours. I was like ready to try to walk.
Yeah.
And I did great. I didn't feel nauseous. My recovery with Benji was a lot harder and I did feel nauseous. I didn't get to walk till the next day because I was feeling so nauseous every time I would try to stand up. And this time it was within a couple hours. I was ready to try, but I didn't get to till several hours later just because he was nursing so much and with everything going on. I just didn't get a chance to until a little later. But I got up and I got to walk a few laps and that was fun. And I felt really great. The next day, that trapped gas and eating, I think, got to me. And I was nauseous all day. I was throwing up to the point that I was shaking. And I think some of it was maybe the spinal coming out. Because before I never had a spinal. I had the epidural with the last two. So they didn't do a spinal. But I think part of it was some of that as coming down from that, as well as eating the food I ate. Because I immediately ate Chick-fil-A right afterwards. So I do think some of that was probably not the best choice. But so be careful what you eat afterwards.
A lot of mamas want Chick-fil-A after they have a baby.
I know. And then, but they had to give me nausea medicine. They had to give it to me because it was just so bad. I couldn't even take care of him. And I don't remember a lot of that day. But John tells me that it was so bad that I was so tired. I just slept the whole time. Yeah, you can. It's good. And then I think he even told me that he tried to give him to me to feed. And I was like, no, he's not hungry. And then I just went back to sleep. So it was really bad. And I remember just him telling me about that the next day. Yeah. Yeah. I was out the whole day. I was so tired. And that's probably just from the medication, the nausea medicine, making me sleepy. But I felt great by that evening. I was back to myself. I didn't have to take any more of the medicine. I was able to take care of him just fine. I was no longer throwing up. And then TMI, had diarrhea and I was able to poop. So I was so glad for that. I was like, I would much rather have diarrhea than sit here and throw up. But that gets my first poop out of the way. So that's great. So I didn't have trouble with that. And I think that's from the nausea medicine as well. And then finally, I was able to pass gas just before they were going to let me. Or I think maybe right after I got home, I passed gas finally. Yeah. But the gas didn't bother me. Once I got all that stuff out and the medicine worked, the gas was still there, but it didn't. As long as I was having the diarrhea, I wasn't having issues where I needed medicine anymore, which is great.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was that. But after I felt better, it was great. And I remember too, they came to send me home after 24 hours. And I remember that being, no. Yeah, I told them no, because I was like, yeah, there's no way I can't even hold him right now without shaking so bad, because I'm throwing up so much and so bad and so hard that I'm shaking. I can't even hold him. There's no way I can go home with a baby right now. And then, so I told him no. I stayed an extra night on my own because of that. And then that night, they came in, the nurse came in. I think you visited me that evening as well. And I think it was after that the nurses came in and they were doing their little checks on him. They were checking his oxygen and his heart and all that stuff. And I was on the phone with John, doing my good nights to everybody when they came in. And he did not like any of the nurses there. He would just cry immediately when they would take him away from me. No matter who it was, it didn't matter. He would just cry. So he started crying when they were doing their checks. And it felt like they were starting to try to look for things to NICU him for, because they go, we need to make, they said he had retractions. He was having retractions and a hard time breathing. His oxygen was, I guess, low. And they needed to make sure he didn't have any more symptoms and all this stuff. And I remember going, what? And I remember John hearing everything going on. And he goes, no, he's fine. He is fine. Y'all aren't there because of him. Y'all are there because you were sick. He's fine. Tell them he's fine. I remember him yelling that at me. You tell them he's fine. And so I was like, it's fine. He's fine, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, you tell them he's fine. And then finally I got off the phone with him and the chaos calmed down. And the charge nurse came in there trying to also listen. And she was the one who was like really concerned with his retractions and everything. This time they kept him on my lap, but he was still really upset that they were doing all these things to him and not letting him eat and all that stuff. So he was screaming mad. And I remember telling her, I'm like, he's just upset. He doesn't like y'all messing with him. Like, he wants to stay on me and he wants to be with me and he trusts me. Like, he's not, there's nothing wrong with him. And I remember telling her too, I go, we're here because I was sick and I chose to stay here another night. We're not here because of him at all. And then she was like, this is not looking good. And we're going to have to check him again at night. And I remember going, okay, whatever, just get out of my room at this point. And so I was just like, okay, whatever. And they left. And so I remember the little nurse, she tried to be sweet, bless her heart, but she came in and I had been struggling to put him down for a couple of hours with him wanting to nurse frequently. And then she comes in and it was 4 a.m. and I had just gotten him to sleep. And she goes, I need to check his vitals again. I need to check his oxygen and make sure he's okay. And I go, nope, we're going to bed. I've just gone to sleep. We're not waking him up. I'm going to bed. You're not checking him anymore. And she was like, okay, kind of thing, and left. But I was like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not waking him up. He's fine. And so the next day we come in, and it was right before shift change. They had the pediatrician come in, and the pediatrician was amazing. He was so kind. He was great. And I had just got done feeding him. And so he goes, can I check him? And I go, yes, you can check him. And so he took him, put him in there, and they warned him. They said, every time you take him for mom, he's going to scream and cry. And so he was okay with that. And he started checking and listening to his heart and everything, and listening and checking his oxygen. And he goes, I think he's just a boy that loves his mom. I think he's fine. And I remember looking over, and the charge nurse was standing there. And I just looked at her with that look of, see, I told you, like, he is completely fine. He just doesn't want to be without mama. And she just pursed her lips and walked away. But I remember that. And I was just like, you're looking for stuff at this point. And so I remember him going, he's just fine or whatever. And then I remember not long after, he was eating again. And it was before, and the pediatrician hadn't left. So one of the nurses said, oh, I guess mentioned it to the pediatrician or his nurse that was with him, that he was calm now and eating. And so she came in and just did one more check to try to listen to the heart to make sure there was no more murmur. And she goes, I just hear him eating. He's fine. So I remember she played it off like they just wanted to do the check just one more time when he was calm. No big deal. But I think it was the nurses coming back going, okay, he's not crying right now. Can we, like trying to find it again. But I don't think the pediatrician himself or his nurse thought that. I think they were just going off what they were told. But yeah, that was probably one of my most frustrating moments after his birth, was the fact that I felt like they were trying to NICU him a bit.
He didn't, and he stayed out.
No.
Yay.
No, yeah.
That was good.
And I did turn down the jaundice test with them. And I remember the doctor asking me why, not the second pediatrician, the first one. And she was like, I've never had that happen before, turn him down. But I'm like, we've been in here all his life. We've been inside. We haven't even seen the sun in 2 days. Right. Let's see what happens after we get out of here and then worry about his jaundice or not.
There you go.
And we did. The first thing I did when I came here, when I got home, I didn't even go inside. My neighbors were laughing because they said I didn't go inside. I just took the car seat. He was asleep in his car seat. And I got my chair and I sat right in the sun and in the grass with my feet touching the grass. And we were both just sitting facing the sun, just soaking it up. And they were like, you're not even going to go inside? And I go, no. I need the sun. That's awesome. I need fresh air. Yeah. And it felt so good doing that. It felt so right. My skin was drinking the sun. It was great.
Yeah.
And after that, the healing just felt so natural. I was able to do things. Get one for your brother too. I was able to pretty much go back to normal. It felt like being home for the most part. I had to really hold myself back from doing too much so I didn't get too sore too fast. But it felt great. Like I felt amazing. And I had no issues healing or anything.
So after all of that, how have you felt processing the fact that you ended up with another C-section, and that was not your plan at all, but that is how things ended up? And
it was not. But I think, again, like I said, it's the fact that, and it's not that I didn't have like that moment of questioning, oh, I'm so sorry, and feeling unsuccessful for that half a second, which my husband really nipped in the bud. And you can hear the whole text at Birthing Instincts. You've heard it, but it's right here. And
you can give a little synopsis of that if you want, because our listeners haven't heard it.
Yeah, I had a moment where I texted my husband that I was sorry, that I felt like we had wasted we had put all this money into something and we're unsuccessful at our goal. We didn't get that home birth that I had promised him. And to be honest, when I first wanted to do this home birth, it wasn't just for me or just for my baby. It was obviously those were two people who it was for, but it was really for the experience of my two older boys. And for John, I felt like it was an experience they deserved to have and to live and to see in a moment they deserve to see. Most importantly, for my husband to see his wife in a new light that he hasn't gotten to see. So for me, when I see a woman and all the videos that I've watched and seen her have that transformation, because that's really what it is, a big transformation of birthing at home and doing it. It is a whole new person. You are being birthed in a way yourself and as a mother and as a woman in general. And it gives me chills just to speak about it. And I wanted that for my husband. He deserved to see his wife in that light. That's such an honor for him to be able to see. And I couldn't give that to him. And so a little bit of doubt in that aspect, a little bit of not really doubt, but fear or unsuccessful feeling of failure starts to creep in. And then of course for my boys, they deserve an experience that they can take when they get older. And if their wives decide that this is the way they want to give birth, that they have someone who has experienced it and knows how to support them through it and have had an example of how to support their wives through this. And I felt like I wasn't able, for a second, I felt like I wasn't able to give them words. And looking back now, obviously that was completely wrong, because they still got the experience to do, and they still got this opportunity to see that this could possibly be an option and be successful. It just didn't work out for me, and that's okay. And so my husband, I had sent him a text apologizing and feeling like we had wasted this money that we had worked so hard for, and that I pushed him into doing, I convinced him into doing. Being such a thrifter, I felt guilty about that, asking for him to pay that much into it. And he responded with the most grace and loving response about how strong I was and about how there was never any money wasted and that he would do it all over again, and that he didn't care how much it cost, because the experience alone that he got to receive, that our boys got to experience, just when it was above and beyond what he expected. The things that midwifery gives, everything that you provided for the birth that was included, that we didn't have to pay for out of pocket because you provided it as part of your cost. The fact that you did even give us a discount, so because we're coming in so late, so that was so kind. And the peace and the grace that you brought into our home, every appointment, that was just so worth it for us. And so it wasn't a failure. I did exactly what I wanted to do. I was working on surrendering. I surrendered. I did that through the whole process. I surrendered to my body and to my intuition, which is exactly what I wanted to do. And then I gained my voice back. When I went into the hospital, I roared every bit.
That's true.
I came in fighting. I roared. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work on my surrender. I wanted to be able to listen to my intuition again and yell for it and roar for this baby and roar and show that strength. And I did that. And my boys saw that. And my husband saw that. And so they still got that change in me that they deserve to see, and that I fought so hard to do and worked so hard for so many years to gain back when I lost it. Because I did. I lost my voice a lot with Benji. After Benji, I've always been a very independent person. I've always been able to, even as a teen, as a young child, I've always been the one to be able to make decisions and be super decisive. I knew what I want. I would do it. I would do anything for what I knew was right and what I wanted to do. But after Benji, I felt like I lost myself a lot. I could not make simple decisions on, oh, this pillow looked good on our couch. Like something so simple, I had to have John's opinion on, because I couldn't just make that decision. I would go to the store by myself and John would be like, just find what looks good and buy it. That's fine. No matter what we're talking about. And I would go and I would come back and I would not have gotten anything because I'm like, I couldn't decide without you being there. I needed somebody else's opinion to almost tell me after that. And now coming back, like it's been so different. I've been able to just be like, this is how I want to do things and how this is my vision. This is what I like. Even during pregnancy, I noticed the change because we came back and we went to go pick out a couch and I go, I don't like that color. My sister-in-law, who has a big impact on some of our decision making as well. We always include her with stuff because we're very close. She was like, oh, I like this color. And John, and it was the same color that John liked, but I was like, I just feel like we're going to get that couch in and I'm going to hate it. I'm going to hate the color. And I was like, I just keep going back to this one color that I really liked. And they did not even like it. They didn't like it. And I was just like, I just really feel like that's the one. And so we're standing there and I'm talking to him about it. I'm like, I can't do this. And I want this color. I need this color. And so we ended up going with the color I liked. And you've seen my couch. Like everyone walks in and they always mention our couch. Like they love it. It's a gorgeous color. And I did the same thing. We were standing there checking it, buying the couch. And I look over and I go, I want that bed. So the next day,
I love it.
Next day I went back and we bought the bed. Because I went home because I was like, I need to measure to make sure it'll fit first before we buy it. So I went home and I went back and I've been able to make decisions again. And it's really because I've been able to get my voice back. I'm back to being that independent. I have made my decisions and you're not changing it kind of thing. So I feel like it was so successful. I could not be happier with way. Even the way it ended, it didn't end the way I planned.
Yeah.
And there will always be, with surgery, there's always some type of trauma. And so there will always be something there. The sadness of, oh, wasn't the way I wanted to end surgery, and another surgery, count it to my tally. But I cannot be happier. And I think because of getting my voice back, being so successful, it supersedes the fact that I did have the C-section again. And the fact that's the only thing only way I'll be able to birth in the future. But it's okay. It's really okay now. And I did everything. Right.
Yeah, you did absolutely amazing. And I know it's something I wanted to talk about before, and I mention it to clients, but just hiring a home birth midwife is not a guarantee of a home birth. That's just not how it works. But it is a commitment that I will go to bat for you and I will do everything I possibly can for you to give you the best possible care.
Yeah, and you absolutely did. You absolutely did. And you did it in such a peaceful way. And that's something that I will forever take because I needed somebody to be peaceful. I needed the calm in my storm because I knew if I ever walked back into a hospital again and needed to do that, then I would be mad. I would be a force to be reckoned with. And I needed to be. Somebody had to be the tornado and somebody had to be the calm in the storm. And so I knew that I wasn't going to be listened to the moment we walked in there. And so I needed somebody there that would listen to me. And you were definitely that. And it's exactly what makes it not so traumatic.
I'm so glad that I could do that for you in that moment. But because I could do that for you in that moment and everything we'd set up beforehand, you still gained your voice and learned that you had it back. You were empowered to be able to make decisions and do whatever you needed to do again because you were supported.
Yeah, that's exactly what I needed. That's exactly what I didn't have with Benji. I didn't have someone there that I could support it. And it's not that I didn't have John or that John wouldn't have been that person, but I needed him at home. I needed him at home in that moment. And I didn't have anybody there to voice for me or to make me feel like I was safe enough to be able to voice. So it definitely was well worth it. And honestly, I'll say this, the care I had before, all this midwifery care that I had with you and the calm and the peace and the grace, it directly impacted my healing and how I recovered as well mentally, for sure. And how I came back and think and look at the fact that I ended up having another C-section.
Thank you for listening. May you be encouraged and strengthened by what you've heard today. Remember, you are dearly loved by your Creator, so be who He created you to be. May you go in peace, friends. Till next time, Shalom.